I joined Lakeview Ridge Estates thinking it would finally give my daughter a place to heal. The tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and quiet lake looked like safety itself. After 15 years in law enforcement, I craved normalcy, a home where my badge could stay in a drawer and my daughter Emma could start fresh after years of therapy and hospital visits. But peace is fragile when power hides behind a clipboard. From the day we moved in, the HOA president, Karen Ellison, made her presence known. She had the smile of a politician and the patience of a storm. Our accessible ramp, she said, was unsightly. The special permit for Emma's therapy pool was questionable. Every week came a new violation notice, always signed in that same looping cursive. At first, I ignored her. I've handled worse bullies in interrogation rooms. But when Emma started crying before school because she didn't want to walk past Karen's house, I knew this wasn't petty. It was harassment. I filed the complaint properly, first with the HOA board, then with the county mediation office. I stayed professional. But people like Karen thrive on escalation. She started showing up wherever Emma was, at the mailbox, at the park, dropping comments like, "Some people use pity like currency." The day everything changed began with a community hearing at Town Hall. The HOA had called her to address compliance concerns over our accessibility modifications. It was supposed to be administrative, a formality, but Karen came prepared for theater. She brought photos of our ramp, printed in glossy 8x10s, as if she were prosecuting a crime. "We all want to be inclusive," she told the panel, "but there's a standard to uphold. If we make exceptions for one family, where does it end?" Her words were daggers wrapped in silk. Emma sat beside me, silent, clutching the stuffed fox she always carried when her anxiety spiked. When Karen pointed directly at her and said, "That ramp isn't even used properly," I saw Emma flinch. "Miss Ellison," I said evenly, "my daughter has mobility challenges recognized under the ADA. This discussion shouldn't be about her personally." Karen crossed her arms. "I'm just protecting property values." The chairperson tried to intervene, but the damage was done. Emma's cheeks were wet, her shoulders shaking. I reached for her hand, but she whispered, "Can we go home?" We left before the hearing ended. In the parking lot, Emma broke down completely. "She makes me feel like I shouldn't live here," she sobbed. That sentence shattered me more than any report I'd ever written. I had spent 2 decades enforcing the law, believing systems protected the innocent. Now my own child was being crushed by one of those systems dressed up as community management. That night I stood in front of the mirror in my home office, staring at the badge inside the drawer. Assistant Commissioner, State Department of Public Safety. I'd earned that title through years of service and sacrifice. I'd promised myself never to use it as leverage in my personal life. But as I looked at Emma's tear-stained face in the hallway reflection, I realized this wasn't personal. It was systemic. I opened the drawer. "All right," I said quietly. "No more hiding." The morning after that disastrous hearing, I drove Emma to school and told her I had a few errands. She didn't need to know what that meant. What she needed was peace, and I intended to give it to her. I parked outside my office downtown, flashing my pass at the security desk. For years, I'd kept my work separate from home life. My team knew me as a calm administrator, someone who preferred paperwork to politics. But that day, as I walked into my division's briefing room, something colder settled in my chest. I was no longer just a parent seeking peace. I was an officer enforcing it. "Morning, Commissioner," my analyst Devon said. "You're early." "Need a quiet favor," I replied. "Strictly internal review." He raised an eyebrow. "HOA trouble?" "You have no idea." Within an hour, I had a folder thick with state filings, nonprofit registrations, and municipal contracts, all tied to the Lakeview Ridge Estates HOA. What I found would have made any investigator's blood run cold. Karen Ellison wasn't just a self-appointed tyrant with a love of bylaws. She'd been siphoning HOA maintenance funds into a consulting company she secretly owned, charging residents twice for landscaping and classifying accessibility modifications as non-compliant fees. Thousands of dollars over years, stolen from people who trusted her. I handed the file to our financial crimes unit under the pretext of routine review. By law, I couldn't direct the investigation, but I could ensure it reached the right desks. It did. Fast. 2 weeks later, I received an update. The state auditor had launched a formal inquiry. The local paper caught wind of it next. Headline: Lakeview Ridge HOA president under state investigation for misuse of funds. By the time the story broke, Karen's once adoring board members were scattering like pigeons. Some called me privately, insisting they'd had no idea. Others begged for leniency. I offered none. You don't rebuild trust by covering corruption. At home, Emma noticed a shift. Neighbors who used to avert their eyes now waved again. A few stopped by with casseroles and apologies that started with, "We should have said something." Emma still hesitating to go outside, but she smiled more. Progress, I thought. Real progress. A month later, the city council summoned Karen for a public accountability hearing. I didn't have to attend, but I did. Not in uniform, not behind a badge, just a mother with a seat in the back row. When she walked in, the confidence was gone. Her signature pearls had been replaced with nervous fingers clutching a binder. The same woman who lectured about community standards could barely meet anyone's eyes. The auditor read from a thick report. Evidence indicates that Ms. Ellison transferred HOA funds to personal accounts, falsified invoices, and retaliated against homeowners who questioned her authority. Karen stammered about misunderstandings, clerical errors, jealousy. None of it mattered. The numbers told the story. The council voted unanimously to remove her from office and refer the matter for criminal prosecution. Afterward, in the hallway, she caught sight of me. "You," she hissed, voice cracking. "You did this." I met her gaze calmly. "No, Karen. You did this. I just turned on the lights." She looked away first. The weeks that followed felt like spring after a long storm. The HOA elected a new board. People who cared more about neighborliness than appearances. They voted to reimburse homeowners for the stolen funds and approved new accessibility guidelines based on federal standards. For the first time, Lakeview Ridge Estates began to look like the community had always pretended to be. One Saturday, I found Emma on the ramp outside, repainting the railings a bright sky blue. She turned to me, a streak of paint across her cheek. "Think Karen will ever come back?" "Not here," I said. "And even if she tried, the rules she abused are gone." She nodded thoughtfully. "You didn't even have to arrest her yourself." I smiled. "The best justice doesn't need handcuffs, sweetheart. It just needs a truth." Months later, I was back in my office reviewing routine reports when Devin knocked. "Commissioner, there's something you'll want to see." He handed me a newspaper. Former HOA president sentenced to 5 years for fraud and embezzlement. I stared at the headline for a long moment. Relief wasn't what I felt. It was steadiness. A confirmation that the system, when guided firmly, still worked. That evening, I cooked Emma's favorite dinner, pasta with too much cheese, and told her the news. She froze mid-bite, then grinned. "So it's really over?" "It's really over," I said. "We can finally live here like everyone else." She leaned back in her chair, smiling. "Good, because I want to start the neighborhood art club. Maybe people will remember this place for something nice." I looked at her, the strong, resilient kid who'd endured more than anyone should, and thought that's exactly how justice is supposed to end, not with anger, but with creation. Later that night, I walked out onto the porch. The lake shimmered in the moonlight, calm for the first time in months. From somewhere down the street came laughter, the sound of neighbors talking easily, freely. The kind of sound that says a community has finally begun to heal. I took my badge from my pocket and turned it over in my hands. For years, it had been a symbol of duty. Now it was a reminder of something deeper. Sometimes power isn't about force. It's about knowing when to act, how to listen, and what to expose. Inside, Emma's laughter echoed through the window. I slipped the badge back into the drawer and closed it gently. The work was done. Peace at last didn't need to be defended. It just needed to be lived.